In November 1944, an entire American squad, 12 men from the 29th Infantry Division, vanished during a routine patrol near the French coast. No bodies, no dog tags, no trace they ever existed except one bullet-riddled helmet found in the sand. The Army listed them as missing in action, presumed killed by German artillery. For 50 years, their families mourned empty graves. Then, in 1994, a construction crew breaking ground for a beach resort found something that shouldn't exist. Bunker EL62, sealed since the war, with scratch marks on the inside of a steel door. Inside, they found film canisters, recording equipment, and 12 American dog tags hung on the wall like trophies. What the Army discovered on those films would terrify them into silence. Not because it showed American soldiers being tortured, but because it showed what they became to survive it. The phone call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March 1994. Jimmy Sullivan wasn't sleeping anyway, hadn't really slept since his grandfather Frank's funeral 4 days ago. The old man had made it to 91, died clutching that photo of his squad he'd kept by his bed for 50 years. 12 young faces in black and white, grinning like wars could be won, and everyone comes home. The answering machine picked up first. Jimmy listened from the kitchen table, where he'd been sitting with Frank's locked cigar box, trying to decide if he should break it open. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Colonel David Mitchell, United States Army Archives Division. This concerns your grandfather, Sergeant Frank Sullivan. Call me immediately." Jimmy grabbed the receiver. "This is Jimmy Sullivan." Silence. Then, "Mr. Sullivan, I apologize for the hour. I need you in Washington tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. "Colonel, my grandfather just died. Whatever paperwork the Army needs—" "This isn't about paperwork. We found something about what happened to his squad." Jimmy's hand tightened on the phone. "They were killed. Artillery strike, November 44. "No, Mr. Sullivan, they weren't. Can you be here tomorrow?" "What are you talking about?" "Not over the phone. Bring any effects your grandfather left. Letters, journals, anything from the war. 8 a.m., Pentagon, South Entrance. Ask for me." Click. Jimmy stood in his dark kitchen, staring at nothing. Outside, Baltimore was dead quiet, that hollow 3 a.m. silence when even the drunks had gone home. He picked up Frank's cigar box. The lock was old, simple. He could pop it with a screwdriver. Frank was dead. Keeping his secrets didn't matter anymore. The lock broke easier than expected. Inside, a Purple Heart, a marksman badge, some yellowed photos. And at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, a small leather journal no bigger than a playing card deck. The leather was stained dark. Water damage, maybe, or sweat, or blood. The first page, November 15th, 1944, the day after the squad disappeared. Jimmy flipped through. Most pages were blank, but scattered throughout were fragments in pencil so faint he had to squint. They're still screaming. Day 3, Tommy's fingernails. Richter knows about Clara. "We won't break, we won't break, we won't break." The last entry was different. Pressed so hard the pencil had torn through paper. Buried it all. God forgive us for surviving. Jimmy set the journal down, hands unsteady. His grandfather, the man who'd taught him to fish, who'd never missed a baseball game, who'd checked the locks 3 times every night, had been carrying something that required God's forgiveness. The drive to D.C. took 3 hours. Jimmy left before dawn, didn't tell his wife Beth where he was going, just said, "Army business," and left her sleeping. The Pentagon looked the same as it had during Jimmy's contractor visits. But Colonel Mitchell's office was different. Sub-basement level, behind 3 security checkpoints. No windows, no name on the door. Mitchell was younger than his voice suggested, maybe 45, built like he still ran 5 miles every morning. But his eyes were wrong, hollow. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for coming." No handshake, just a gesture to sit. The office was bare except for a single box on the desk, red stamps all over it, classified, restricted access, eyes only. "What did you bring?" Mitchell asked. Jimmy placed the cigar box on the desk. Mitchell put on latex gloves before opening it, handling each item like evidence. He stopped at the journal, reading those faint entries. "Richter knows about Clara. That's your grandmother?" "Yeah, Clara Sullivan, died in '78. Mitchell pulled out a folder from the box. 3 weeks ago, French construction workers found a bunker near Omaha Beach. Wasn't on any maps, ours or German. It had been sealed with concrete from the outside." He slid a photograph across. A concrete structure, half buried in sand. Above the entrance, still visible, EL62. "Inside, we found evidence your grandfather's squad was held there." "Held there? They were captured?" Another photo. A concrete wall covered in scratches. Thousands of them. Words, names, dates carved into the surface. Jimmy could make out Sullivan gouged deep into the concrete. Below it, "We are still Americans." "There's more." Mitchell's voice was flat, professional. "We found German documentation. The officer in charge was Hauptmann Ernst Richter. He was conducting something called Project Seelbrecher." "Soul Breaker," Jimmy translated. His grandmother had been German, made sure he learned the language. "Your grandfather's squad wasn't killed in combat, Mr. Sullivan. They were captured and held for 58 days. 58? Jimmy's mouth went dry. "But they came home. My grandfather came home." "Yes, all 12 of them survived. That's what doesn't make sense." Mitchell pulled out another folder. Richter was a psychiatrist before the war. His project was to document the breaking point of American soldiers. Not physically, psychologically. He wanted to prove Americans would break faster than other nationalities. "Did they break?" Mitchell pulled out a small film canister. "This is from day 8 of 58. I'm going to show you 1 minute, then you decide if you want to see more." The projector was already set up. The image flickered to life on the white wall, grainy black and white, but clear enough. 12 Americans standing in a concrete room. They looked tired, but intact. Then a man entered the frame, thin, wire-rimmed glasses, moving with precise medical efficiency. "Herr Dr. Richter's log, day 8, he said in accented English. "The Americans continue to resist standard interrogation. Today, we begin psychological phase." He approached the youngest-looking soldier. "Private Brennan?" "Thomas. Your sister Margaret has polio, yes?" The kid, he couldn't have been 20, went rigid. "I have received a letter from America, from the hospital. Would you like me to read it? She asks where her brother is. She wonders why he doesn't write." "You're lying." The voice was Frank's, off camera, but unmistakable. Richter smiled. "Sergeant Sullivan, always protecting your men. Tell me, does your Clara know you volunteered for this patrol? That you could have stayed at headquarters, but chose to abandon her?" The camera kept rolling. Richter pulled out a syringe. "This will not kill Private Brennan. But for 6 hours he will experience progressive paralysis, like his dear sister. Perhaps it will help him understand her suffering." He injected Tommy before anyone could move. The kid started to convulse, legs giving out. That's when Jimmy heard it, soft at first, then stronger. "Take me out to the ball game." Frank's voice, steady despite everything. "Take me out with the crowd." Other voices joining in, all 11 others, their voices growing louder as Tommy writhed on the floor. "Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back." Richter shouted something in German. The film cut. Mitchell turned off the projector. That was day 8. It got worse. Much worse. But they never broke. Not once in 58 days. Jimmy realized he was gripping the chair arms hard enough to leave marks. They sang to him. Every time one was tortured, the others would sing, tell jokes, recite baseball statistics. They turned the bunker into something Richter didn't expect, a place where brotherhood was stronger than pain. How did they escape? Mitchell pulled out another document. Day 44, Richter's final entry. The Americans have done something unexpected. They have become something else. What did they become? Killers. Mitchell's voice was flat. On day 44, your grandfather and his squad killed Richter. Then they escaped, traveled 50 miles through occupied France. All 12 made it to Allied lines. Jimmy looked at the journal entry. God forgive us for surviving. Now he understood. They hadn't just survived torture. They'd survived what survival had required them to become. There's something else, Mitchell said. We've located someone, Carl Dietrich. He was a guard at the bunker. Says he's been waiting 50 years for someone to find it. He'll only talk to family members of the squad. A Nazi guard? A 19-year-old conscript who, according to his letter, helped them escape. He says he has information about what really happened on day 44. Jimmy stood. His grandfather had kept this secret for 50 years, took it to his grave. Maybe that's where it should stay. But 12 men had suffered, survived, and lived with the consequences. Someone should know their truth. When do we leave? 6 p.m. Military transport from Andrews. Mitchell stood too. Mr. Sullivan, what you're going to see in that bunker, it's going to change how you remember your grandfather. Jimmy thought about Frank in his last days, whispering those 12 names like a prayer. Tommy Brennan, Billy Hutchinson, Eugene Palmer, Tony Moretti, Bobby Novak, and the others. Always in the same order, always with the same reverence. My grandfather was a good man, Colonel. I'm not questioning that, but good men sometimes do terrible things, and terrible experiences sometimes make good men. The question is, which truth do you want to preserve? The military transport to France was a cargo plane, no windows, just web seats and the smell of hydraulic fluid. Jimmy sat across from Mitchell, who hadn't spoken since takeoff. You didn't tell me everything, Jimmy said over the engine noise. Mitchell looked up. No. Why? Because you wouldn't have come. Mitchell pulled out another folder. Day 22, Richter's notes. He handed it over. Jimmy read, Sullivan maintains remarkable resistance. Today I showed him photographs of his daughter's funeral. Fabricated, but convincing. He laughed, said I'd gotten the dress wrong. Clara would never bury their child in blue. How does he know I'm lying? Unless... They've been memorizing personal details about each other. Fascinating. He faked their families' deaths? Among other things, day 30 he started using their own voices, had a German soldier who could mimic American accents record messages. Tommy, it's your mother. Please tell them what they want. I can't lose you too. That sort of thing. Did it work? No, they'd shared enough personal details that they could spot the fakes. Your grandfather had them memorize birthdays, middle names, addresses, even what their mother's cooking smelled like. Anything Richter could fake, they could verify. They landed at a small military airfield just after dawn. A car waited. Unmarked, French military driver who said nothing. The fog was so thick, Jimmy couldn't see 20 feet ahead. The bunker squatted in the sand like a concrete tumor. Smaller than Jimmy expected, more buried. The entrance had been cleared and reinforced with modern supports. A single guard nodded at Mitchell's credentials. Dietrich? Mitchell asked. The guard pointed down the beach. An old man sat on a concrete barrier, staring at nothing. Carl Dietrich looked ancient, bent spine, trembling hands, clouded eyes that cleared when he saw Jimmy. You have his walk, Dietrich said. Frank walked like he was carrying invisible weight. What happened on day 44? Jimmy asked. First, understand days 20 through 30. Dietrich stood painfully. Come. Inside the bunker, the smell hit immediately. Mold, salt, and something else. Old fear. Dietrich moved slowly down the narrow corridor. This room, he opened a rusted door, was for what Richter called enhanced sessions. Concrete walls, ceiling, floor, hooks in the ceiling, drains, dark stains everywhere. Day 20, Richter stopped pretending it was interrogation. It became pure research. How much pain before the mind breaks? How much fear? He had charts, graphs, measurements. Dietrich pulled out a small notebook. I kept my own records, to remember. He read, Day 23. Palmer held underwater repeatedly, near drowning 17 times. Between each, the others sang hymns. Richter screaming at them to stop, they sang louder. Day 26. Hutchinson's bones broken systematically, left hand first. They had to listen to each crack. Sullivan started telling jokes. Stupid jokes. Why did the chicken cross the road? Kept telling them while Hutchinson screamed. Jimmy stepped outside, breathed deep. Mitchell followed. There's more film, Mitchell said. Day 30. Back inside, they set up a small projector. The image was clearer. Richter had upgraded his equipment. All 12 Americans in frame, but different now. 30 pounds lighter, maybe more. Wounds visible, but standing. Still standing. Richter entered, dragging something. A box of personal effects. Wallets, letters, photographs. Your families think you're dead, he said calmly. I've sent telegrams. Missing in action. Presumed killed. You're being mourned. Your wives will remarry. Your children will forget you. He pulled out a letter. From Mrs. Sullivan. She's asking the Army for death benefits. Needs money for your daughter. Frank's voice steady. Clara can't write? Paralyzed her right hand in a kitchen accident, 1942. Richter's face twitched. He pulled out another letter. Mrs. Brennan then, selling the family farm. Tommy's family never owned a farm, Billy said. City folks, always have been. Richter threw the letters aside, pulled out a gun, pressed it to Eugene Palmer's head. Tell me something true, or he dies. Silence. Tell me, then Frank spoke. True? We feel sorry for you. Richter spun. What? You're alone. You've been alone this whole time. 30 days, and you've never once had anyone check on you. No visitors, no relief, just you and us. Frank stepped forward, chains rattling. We have each other. You have nothing. Richter hit him with the gun butt. Frank went down but kept talking through bloody teeth. That's why you'll lose. You're trying to break 12. We only have to break 1. The film cut. Dietrich turned off the projector. That's when it changed. Richter started making mistakes, forgetting to lock doors properly, leaving tools within reach. Not intentional. He was breaking down. From what? From them. They were in his head. He told me once, I hear them singing when I sleep. I dream I'm one of them, tortured by myself. They'd infected him with their brotherhood. A car approached outside. Mitchell checked his watch. That'll be our problem. A woman got out. Mid-40s, expensive coat, angry face. Sarah Novak Williams. Jimmy recognized the eyes, same as Bobby Novak in the squad photo. My father was Robert Novak, she said without preamble. I know what you're doing, and you need to stop. Ms. Williams, Mitchell started. My father died in 1991, peaceful, in bed. His last words were, let it stay buried. I'm here to make sure it does. She looked at Jimmy. Your grandfather kept this secret for a reason. They all did? Because what happened here wasn't heroic. It was necessary. There's a difference. People deserve to know? Know what? That our fathers became animals to survive? That they did things that made them wake up screaming for 40 years? Her voice cracked. My father once told me he did something in the war that God couldn't forgive. I said, God forgives everything. He said, not this, never this. She pulled out a document. I have power of attorney from 7 families. If you try to release anything, we'll bury you in litigation. You can't hide history, Mitchell said. We're not hiding it. We're protecting it from people who'd use it as a torture manual, from families who don't need to know their fathers were... She stopped. Were what? Jimmy asked. She looked at the bunker. Day 44? Has he told you about Day 44? Not yet. When he does, you'll understand. Some truths are poison. They don't heal. They destroy. She turned to Dietrich. You should have stayed hidden. Dietrich smiled sadly. I'm 90 years old, child. What can you threaten me with? That time won't do soon, anyway. Sarah's face softened slightly. My father mentioned you, said you were just a boy, said you tried to help. Too little, too late? Still. She turned back to Jimmy. There's a meeting tonight, all the families who could make it. 8 o'clock, Hotel Maritime in Caen. Come, hear what we have to say, then decide. After she left, Dietrich led them deeper into the bunker, in the last cell, scratched into the wall. Bobby Novak broke day 31. Jimmy stared. Someone broke? Not how you think, Dietrich said. He broke Richter's rules, found a weakness in his restraints, got free, could have escaped. Instead, he went to Richter's quarters. To kill him? To steal his journal, the one with his wife's address, his daughter's name, everything Richter valued. Dietrich smiled. Bobby memorized it all, then put it back. From day 31 on, whenever Richter tortured someone, Bobby would recite details about Richter's family, their birthdays, their favorite foods, what Richter wrote about missing them. Psychological warfare. The student surpassing the teacher. Richter stopped sleeping, started making more mistakes. By day 40, he was taking stimulants to stay awake. Paranoid, seeing threats everywhere. Mitchell's phone rang. He answered, face darkening. The French want the bunker sealed tomorrow. We have tonight to document everything. Then we better see day 44, Jimmy said. Dietrich pulled out one final canister. I saved this, Richter's last recording. But understand, after you see this, you'll have to decide. Do you honor 12 men's heroism, or do you bury 12 men's necessary sins? He loaded the film. The image was crystal clear. Richter had wanted perfect documentation of his final session, but what appeared on screen would haunt Jimmy forever. The film started with Richter's face filling the frame. Day 44. But this wasn't the composed doctor from day 8. His eyes were bloodshot, uniform-stained, hands shaking as he adjusted the camera. Final session, he said in English, voice cracking. The Americans have... They've won? They're in my head. I hear them singing when I'm alone. I dream their dreams. He turned the camera to show all 12 Americans. They were skeletal now, some unable to stand without support. Tommy Brennan's left hand was a wrapped stump. Eugene Palmer's skin was mottled with burns, but they stood in formation. Today, one dies, Richter announced. You choose who, or I kill you all. Silence. Then Frank stepped forward. Me? No, me, Tommy said immediately. I'm oldest, Billy countered. Should be me. All 12 began volunteering, arguing about who deserved to die for the others. Richter watched them fight over who got to sacrifice themselves, and something in his face just collapsed. Stop! He pulled out his pistol, waved it wildly. You're not supposed to want this. You're supposed to break, to turn on each other. We did break, Frank said quietly. Day 35. We all broke. The room went still. Even Richter stopped moving. Day 35, Frank continued, when you had Palmer's fingernails pulled while making Tommy watch. Tommy broke, begged you to stop, offered information. Jimmy leaned forward. This wasn't in any report. Day 36, Frank went on. Billy broke when you told him his son was dead. Cried for 3 hours. Day 37, I broke. When you played my daughter's voice on that recording, I would have told you anything. One by one, each soldier confessed their breaking point, the moment they'd shattered, the information they'd offered, the betrayals they'd attempted. But here's what you missed, Frank said. We all broke, but never at the same time. When one broke, the others held him up. When Tommy begged, we sang louder to drown him out. When Billy cried, we told stories to bring him back. When I offered information, Bobby started reciting your wife's birthday, your daughter's middle name, reminded you we knew about your family too. Richter's gun hand was trembling now. We broke individually, Frank said, But we never broke together. That's what you can't understand. Breaking doesn't matter if someone catches you when you fall." Richter turned to Dietrich, who was behind the camera. "You, boy, tell them what animals they've become." Dietrich's voice, younger but unmistakable. "They're not animals, Herr Hauptmann. They're men, better men than us." That's when Richter snapped completely. He started screaming in German, waving the gun. Then he grabbed Tommy, the youngest, the weakest, and dragged him to the center of the room. "You want to die for each other? Watch this." He put the gun to Tommy's head. That's when Bobby Novak said something that changed everything. Clara Richter, born March 15, 1921, brown eyes. Pregnant, due in January, lives at 42 Wilhelmstrasse, Berlin. Likes Beethoven, afraid of thunderstorms. Richter froze. "Your daughter will be born while you're here," Bobby continued. "You've already chosen the name. Eric if it's a boy, Anna if it's a girl." "How?" "You talk in your sleep," Frank said. "We've been listening for 44 days. We know everything about you, your fears, your dreams, your father who beat you, your mother who died when you were 12. "You're becoming us," Tommy added, still on his knees with the gun to his head. "Isolated, afraid, broken. The only difference is you're alone." Richter looked around wildly. 12 pairs of eyes staring at him. Not with hate, with pity. "You could join us," Frank said. "Put down the gun. Help us escape. Become part of something instead of apart from everything." For a moment, just a moment, Richter lowered the gun. His face crumpled like a child's. Then he raised it again. Not at them, at himself, under his chin. "I'm already dead," he whispered. "Berlin knows I've failed, but I can choose how." "Don't," Frank said. "That's the coward's way." "I'm a coward." Richter was crying now. "I've always been a coward. That's why I became this." He pulled something from his pocket. Papers. "Other facilities. Other prisoners. 17 Americans in 3 locations. Take it. Save them." He threw the papers at Frank's feet. "Now watch a coward die like a coward." But before he could pull the trigger, something unexpected happened. Eugene Palmer started singing, not "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," a German lullaby. "Guten Abend, gut Nacht." Richter's hand shook. My mother sang that. Other voices joined in. 12 American soldiers singing a German lullaby to their Nazi torturer. Richter lowered the gun, dropped it, fell to his knees sobbing. "Kill me," he begged. "Please, I can't live with what I've done." Frank picked up the gun, checked it, loaded, ready. The film jumped, damaged frames. When it resumed, Richter was on the ground, but not shot. His wrists were cut, blood pooling. Frank knelt beside him, holding his wrists, not trying to stop the bleeding, just holding him. "We won't kill you," Frank said, "but we won't save you either." "The information," Richter gasped. "It's real. Save them." "We will." Richter looked at each of them. "I'm sorry." "We know," Tommy said. Richter died looking at them. His last words, "You're free." But then the film showed something that made Jimmy's stomach turn. The 12 soldiers didn't leave immediately. They went through Richter's pockets, took his identification, his money, his weapon. They stripped him of anything useful. Then Bobby Novak did something horrible. He took Richter's wedding ring, put it on his own finger. "For his wife," Bobby said to the others. "So she knows he died wearing it." But Frank shook his head. "Keep it. We might need to trade it for food." They left Richter's body there. No burial, no ceremony. Just 12 men limping out of frame, supporting each other, carrying stolen supplies from their dead torturer. The film ended. Dietrich turned off the projector. "That's the official version." "There's more?" Jimmy asked. "After the camera stopped, they came back, made me help them carry Richter to the ocean, weighted him with chains, sank him, said if Berlin found his body, they'd know the Americans escaped. Better to let them think he deserted." "They covered up his death?" They covered up everything, burned most of the films, destroyed the medical equipment, would have blown up the bunker if they'd had explosives. Dietrich pulled out another notebook. But first, they did something else. What? They interrogated me for 6 hours. Everything I knew about German positions, patrol routes, safe houses. Your grandfather wrote it all down. They needed intelligence to make their escape. Did they torture you? No, they didn't need to. After what I'd watched for 44 days, I would have told them anything to make it stop. He laughed bitterly. Richter was right about one thing. Psychological pressure is more effective than physical. Mitchell had been silent, but now spoke. The 17 Americans Richter mentioned. Were they really saved? Dietrich nodded. Your grandfather memorized those locations, reported them when they reached Allied lines, but separately. Each man reported different pieces, so no one would know the intelligence came from a deal with Richter. They made a deal with him? No, they let him think they did. They were always going to take that information. The only question was whether Richter died thinking he'd done one good thing. The bunker felt smaller suddenly. Colder. There's one more thing, Dietrich said. The escape. 19 days through occupied France. You want to know what they really did? Jimmy wasn't sure he did, but he nodded. They killed 14 Germans, not soldiers, farmers mostly, 2 Hitler Youth, anyone who saw them and might report them. Dietrich's voice was flat. Your grandfather kept count, carved notches in his rifle stock. He assigned each killing to different men, so they all carried equal guilt. They murdered civilians? They survived. That's all. They survived. The sound of vehicles outside. Multiple engines. Mitchell checked his phone. The families are here, all of them. They walked outside to find 7 cars parked on the beach. People getting out, ages ranging from 30 to 80. Children and grandchildren of Baker Company. Dorothy Brennan, Tommy's widow, stood at the front, 81 years old, but fierce. Mr. Sullivan, she said, we need to talk about what happens to this place. Behind her, the other families spread out. Some were crying, seeing the bunker for the first time. Others stood rigid, military-bearing inherited from fathers they'd never fully known. You've seen the films, Dorothy said. It wasn't a question. Some of them. Day 44? Yes? She nodded. Then you know why this needs to stay buried. Literally. She gestured to a truck pulling up, a cement mixer. You're going to seal it? We're going to erase it. Tonight, before anyone else can find what's in there. That's evidence of war crimes, Mitchell said, committed against Americans. It's also evidence of war crimes committed by Americans, Sarah Novak Williams said. 14 civilians, Colonel, including children. They were escaping. They were surviving, Dorothy interrupted. And survival required terrible things. Things that would destroy their legacies, hurt their families, and give ammunition to every anti-American voice in the world. A younger man stepped forward. I'm Michael Palmer, Eugene's son. My father became a priest after the war, spent 40 years counseling veterans. You know what he told me before he died? I saved 17 Americans with information I got from a Nazi. I killed 2 German boys to keep that secret. Which makes me hero or monster? Both, Jimmy said quietly. Everyone looked at him. They were both, heroes and monsters, victims and killers, broken men who refused to break completely. He looked at the bunker. Maybe that's what needs to be remembered. Or maybe, Dorothy said, they've earned the right to be remembered as they lived after. As the men who came home and built good lives despite carrying hell with them. She pulled out a canister. This is the last film, day 45. The escape begins. Do you want to see what your grandfather really was, Mr. Sullivan? Or do you want to remember him as the man who taught you to fish? Jimmy looked at the families, all watching him, all waiting. The cement truck's engine rumbled, ready to pour. He had to decide now. Jimmy took the canister from Dorothy. I need to see it. Several families stepped forward in protest, but Dorothy raised her hand. It's his right. Frank was squad leader. They set up the projector in the bunker's main room. The families crowded in, some reluctant, others unable to look away. The cement truck waited outside like a burial detail. The film was different, handheld, shaky. Not Richter's methodical documentation, but something stolen, desperate. The 12 were outside the bunker, dawn light showing their condition clearly. They looked like corpses walking. Tommy couldn't use his left hand. Eugene's burns wept through makeshift bandages. Billy dragged his left leg, but they moved in formation, supporting each other. Frank's voice, barely audible. 3 miles to the first checkpoint. Dietrich says German patrol changes at 0600. We have 20 minutes. They made it maybe 500 yards before Tommy collapsed. Leave me, he gasped. Not happening. Frank and Bobby lifted him, made a chair with their arms. We're too slow, Billy said. They'll catch us. That's when they heard it. Vehicles approaching. The camera swung wildly as they dove into a ditch. Through the lens, 2 German trucks passing. Supply convoy, not a patrol. When it passed, Frank made a decision that changed everything. We take the next vehicle. Sarge, we can barely walk. Exactly why we need wheels. 40 minutes later, a farmer's truck approached. Single driver, no passengers. Frank stepped into the road, hands raised. The truck stopped. An old man got out, confused. The film showed what happened next in horrific clarity. Frank approached slowly, speaking broken German. The farmer relaxed, started to point down the road, giving directions. That's when Bobby came from behind, wire around the farmer's throat. The old man struggled, clawed, made horrible sounds. It took 3 minutes for him to die. 3 minutes of the camera recording everything while the others watched the road. They loaded his body in the truck bed, covered it with canvas. Eugene, despite his burns, took the wheel. Anyone asks, Frank said, we're German wounded heading to the field hospital. The film cut to later, inside the truck, most of them unconscious or close to it. Tommy was delirious, muttering about his sister. Palmer's burns were infected, the smell filling the cab. Then a checkpoint. German soldiers with rifles. Frank, in Dietrich's uniform, got out, spoke German with surprising fluency, showed papers taken from Richter. The guard looked suspicious, called over an officer. That's when one of the Americans in the back, the film showed it was Tony Moretti, started screaming, not from pain, intentionally, blood-curdling shrieks that made the Germans step back. Frank said something in German. The officer nodded quickly, waved them through. Later, Eugene explained to the camera. Told them we were transporting a soldier who'd been buried alive in a bombing. Psychological trauma. They didn't want to look closer. The film jumped to day 3 of the escape. They'd abandoned the truck, too conspicuous. Now they were in a barn, and they had company. 2 Hitler Youth boys, maybe 15. They'd found the Americans sleeping and tried to run. Billy had caught one. Tony had the other. The boys were on their knees, crying, begging in German. Frank stood over them with Richter's pistol. They've seen us, Bobby said. They'll report us. They're kids, Eugene protested. Kids with uniforms, kids with authority to call in our position. The argument went on for 10 minutes, the boys crying throughout. Then Frank made the decision. We vote, all 12. Majority decides. The vote, 7 for killing them, 5 against. Frank turned to the boys, said something in German. They started crying harder. Then he shot them both. Quick, clean. 2 shots each to ensure death. The camera caught Eugene vomiting. Tommy turned away, but they all kept moving. They buried the boys in the barn's dirt floor, took their uniforms, might need them, moved on before dawn. Day 8 of the escape. They found a farmhouse, family of 5 inside. The Americans were starving, infected, dying. They went in at night, tied up the family, parents, 3 children, took food, medical supplies, civilian clothes. The farmer's wife saw Tommy's hand, started to cry, said something in German. "She has a son in the war," Eugene translated. "Says he's 19, too." Tommy knelt beside her, whispered something. She nodded, still crying. They left the family tied but alive. Loose enough they'd escape in a few hours. But as they were leaving, the youngest child, maybe 8, got free, ran for the door, screaming. If he got outside, the whole village would hear. Frank caught him at the threshold, hand over his mouth. The boy bit down hard, drew blood. For a moment, Frank's hands moved to the child's neck. The camera showed him starting to squeeze. Then Tommy grabbed Frank's arm. "No, not this one." Frank let go. The boy ran back to his mother. They left quickly, knowing the alarm would sound soon. Day 12. They found German wounded, 3 soldiers injured, abandoned by their unit. The Germans begged for water, for help. The Americans took their uniforms, their papers, their supplies, left them naked in the cold. The camera showed them walking away as the Germans called after them, pleading. "They'll die," Eugene said. "Not our problem," Frank replied. Day 15. Palmer's infection was killing him. He needed real medical help, or he'd die within days. They found a German field hospital, small, maybe 20 beds. The plan was insane. 4 of them would pose as German wounded, get treated, steal supplies. But inside, they found American POWs, 3 of them injured, under guard. The film showed Frank's face changing. Decision made. That night, they went back. Not just for supplies. The camera didn't show what happened inside. Just the outside of the hospital, muffled sounds, a single scream, cut short. Then 12 Americans emerged, supporting 3 more. The hospital was burning behind them. "How many?" someone asked Frank. "Don't count the necessary," he replied. Day 19. They could see Allied lines, less than a mile, but between them and safety, a German patrol. 6 soldiers, young, green, probably never seen combat. The Americans were exhausted. No more ammunition. Most could barely walk. "We go around," Eugene said. "No strength left," Frank replied. "Through or nothing." They waited until dark, moved in silent, practiced formation despite their injuries. The film showed only shadows, sounds of struggle, a young voice calling, "Mutter, Mother," before going silent. When dawn came, 12 Americans crossed into Allied territory. Behind them, 6 German soldiers lay dead. Boys, really, not much older than Tommy. The film ended with them collapsing at an American checkpoint, soldiers rushing to help. The last image, Frank looking back toward German territory, counting on his fingers. 12 made it. But at what cost? Dietrich stopped the projector. The bunker was silent, except for Dorothy Brennan crying quietly. 14 confirmed dead, Mitchell said finally. Maybe more in that hospital. They did what they had to, Bill Jr. said, but his voice was uncertain. Did they? Mary Palmer asked. Those Hitler Youth boys, the farmers, they had choices. Easy to judge from 50 years away, Sarah shot back. They were tortured, dying, desperate. Jimmy found his voice. There's something else on Frank's journal I didn't understand before. A number, 23. Everyone looked at him. That was his count, Dietrich said quietly. Your grandfather kept the real number. 23 Germans died during their escape. The others knew about 14. Frank carried 9 alone. Why? Because someone had to remember the full cost. He chose himself. Outside, the cement truck driver honked, getting impatient. We need to decide, Dorothy said. Do we bury this forever, or does the world need to know what survival really costs? My father would want it buried, someone said. Mine would want the truth known, another countered. Jimmy looked around the room. These families had carried this weight secondhand for decades. Their father's nightmares, their strange reactions, their inability to watch war movies or attend 4th of July fireworks. There's one more film, Dietrich said suddenly. Not from the bunker, from after. He pulled out a final canister. 1946. Someone filmed their reunion. The projector whirred to life one last time. A VFW hall. 12 men in ill-fitting suits. They looked healthier, but still damaged. Tommy's missing fingers obvious. Eugene's burn scars visible. Billy's limp pronounced. They were trying to dance with wives, girlfriends, trying to look normal. But the camera caught the truth. How they kept checking exits. How they flinched at sudden noises. How they constantly counted each other. Then someone proposed a toast. Frank stood, raised his glass. To the 23 Germans who died so we could come home. May their families find peace. To the 17 Americans we saved with blood-bought information, Tommy added. To Richter, Bobby said, surprising everyone. Who died thinking he'd done one good thing? To us, Eugene finished, who lived when we should have died, who became monsters to stay men, who came home carrying hell. They drank. Then Frank said something that explained everything. We tell no one. We carry this alone, together, but alone. Our families deserve better than the truth. The film ended. But we got the truth anyway, Dorothy said, in their nightmares, in their distance, in the way they could never quite come back. She stood, faced the families. They voted then to carry it alone. Now we vote. Do we honor their choice, or do we reveal what they tried to hide? Before anyone could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor. A woman appeared, elderly, walking with a cane, but dignified. Clara Richter, Ernst Richter's widow. The bunker erupted, families shouting, Mitchell moving to protect her. She raised her hand. Please, I'm 91 years old. I'm dying. Let me speak. The room slowly quieted. My husband was a monster, she said simply. He tortured boys in the name of science. Your fathers killed him and threw his body in the ocean. This was justice. She pulled out an envelope. But your Frank Sullivan sent me this in 1946. Inside was money, American dollars, quite a lot for 1946, and a note. For your child. From 23 Germans who died. Their deaths bought our lives. This money, taken from them, should buy your child a future. Tell them their father died quickly. That is the only mercy we can offer. Clara looked at the families. Your fathers weren't heroes or monsters. They were men in an impossible situation who did impossible things. They killed my husband and then sent money to his widow. That's not evil or good. That's human. She turned to Jimmy. Your grandfather visited me in 1973. Asked if I needed anything. I slapped him. He stood there and took it. Then he said, I would have killed 100 Richters to save my brothers, but I would also feed 100 widows he left behind. That's what survival cost. Not just becoming a killer, but living as one. She moved toward the exit, then stopped. Bury it, she said. Bury it all. Let the dead rest. Let the living remember them as they chose to be remembered, as men who came home. She left. The families stood in the bunker where their fathers had been broken and reformed, where boys became killers, where killers became brothers, where brothers became the walking wounded who somehow built lives worth living. We vote, Dorothy said. All or nothing, complete burial or complete revelation. One by one they voted. Jimmy was last. He thought of Frank teaching him to fish, patient and gentle. The same hands that had strangled a farmer. The same man who'd sent money to his victim's widow. 23 Germans dead. 17 Americans saved. 12 men who carried both numbers for 50 years. What's your vote, Mr. Sullivan? Dorothy asked. Outside, the cement truck waited to bury everything forever. Before I vote, Jimmy said, there's something else in Frank's journal I haven't shared. He pulled out the small leather book, found a page near the back. The writing was different, clearer, more recent. This entry is from 1993, the year before he died. He read, Jimmy will find this someday. When he does, he'll have to choose. Tell the world we were heroes who suffered, or tell them we were men who did what men do in war, survive at any cost. I hope he chooses neither. I hope he lets us be forgotten. The 17 we saved don't know our names. The 23 we killed are unmarked graves. Let both truths die with us. But then there's this, Jimmy continued, flipping the page. Written the day before he died. I was wrong. Forgetting us means forgetting them. All of them. The 17 who lived, the 23 who died. Richter, who was broken by his own methods. Even the Hitler Youth boys whose only crime was being born in the wrong country at the wrong time. Someone should remember the full cost, not just of war, but of survival. Dorothy stepped forward. There's something you all need to know about what happened after they came home. She pulled out a thick envelope. Letters between the 12. They created a fund. Each man contributed monthly for 50 years. By 1990, it was over $200,000. For what? Sarah asked. To find the families of the 23 Germans they killed, to send them money, anonymously. They spent decades tracking down widows, children, grandchildren, sending cash with no explanation. She handed Jimmy a ledger. Names, addresses, amounts sent. Your grandfather administered it, even found the families of those Hitler Youth boys, sent their parents money every Christmas for 40 years. Jimmy stared at the ledger, meticulous records in Frank's handwriting, not just payments, but notes. Farmer's widow remarried, seems happy. Boy's mother still grieving, sent extra. Hospital orderly's children in university now. They paid blood money, Michael Palmer said quietly. My father called it that, said every check was a confession. Or penance, Bill Jr. added. Mitchell, who'd been silent, finally spoke. The Army's position is complicated. These men committed war crimes. They also saved American lives with intelligence gained through torture. They're simultaneously heroes and criminals. They're men, Clara Richter said from the doorway. Everyone turned. They thought she'd left. I came back because you need to hear this. She entered slowly, leaning on her cane. After Frank visited me in 1973, I did my own investigation. Found other survivors from that bunker. Guards who transferred out. Officers who knew about Project Sealbreaker. She pulled out a file. There were 6 other bunkers, 63 Allied soldiers subjected to the same program. You know how many survived? Silence. None. 0. Every other group broke completely, turned on each other, died insane or broken. Your fathers were the only ones who survived intact. Why? Jimmy asked. Because of what they discovered by accident. That shared suffering creates bonds stronger than individual breaking points. Richter documented it without understanding it. The singing, the jokes, the physical support. It wasn't defiance. It was survival evolution. They accidentally created the only defense against systematic torture. She opened her file. The CIA studied Richter's work in the 1950s. So did the KGB. Both concluded the same thing. Isolation is key to breaking prisoners. Never let them bond. Never let them support each other. Your father's survival literally rewrote torture methodology worldwide. You're saying they made torture worse? Sarah asked, horrified. No, they proved torture only works on isolated individuals. Every military now trains soldiers to resist by maintaining unit cohesion. The CRE program, resistance training. It all comes from studying what your fathers did. Dietrich spoke up. There's one more thing. The escape route. I gave them bad information. Everyone turned to stare. The route I suggested would have led them into 3 German patrols. Certain capture. Your grandfather figured it out by day 2. But instead of killing me, they kept me talking. Got the real information. Then Frank made me think I'd help them willingly. Why? So I could live with myself. He knew I'd have to survive, too. Carry what I'd witnessed. He gave me a story where I was slightly less complicit. Dietrich laughed bitterly. Even while escaping hell, they were thinking about someone else's aftermath. The cement truck driver honked again. Longer, more insistent. We need to vote, Dorothy said. But Jimmy wasn't done. There's one more film, not from the bunker, from last week. Everyone looked confused. I hired a private investigator to track down something Frank mentioned in his journal. He pulled out a modern VHS tape. This is from a nursing home in Ohio. Mitchell had a portable TV with VHS player. Jimmy inserted the tape. An elderly woman appeared on screen, mid-80s, frail but alert. My name is Margaret Brennan Stevens. Tommy Brennan was my brother. Gasps around the room. Tommy's sister, the one with polio. I know what happened in that bunker. Tommy told me. Not the details, but enough. He came home missing 3 fingers and part of his soul, but he also came home with purpose. She shifted in her wheelchair. Every month for 18 years, until he died, Tommy sent money to German families. He volunteered at the VA. He taught baseball to kids who'd lost fathers in Korea. He turned his survival into service. She looked directly at the camera. People ask if I'm proud of my brother. I say yes, not because he survived torture, not because he killed enemies, but because he came home and chose to build instead of break. All 12 of them did. She held up a photo, the 12 at a reunion, older, graying, but standing in that same formation. They called themselves the Walking Dead, said they died in that bunker and everything after was borrowed time. But look what they did with that borrowed time. Raised families, built businesses, served communities, helped other veterans. My brother's last words were, "Tell them we held the line." I thought he meant in the bunker. Now I know he meant after. They held the line against becoming the monsters they'd been forced to become. The tape ended. Dorothy was crying now, several others too. One more piece of evidence, Mitchell said. He pulled out a classified folder. Declassified yesterday, the 17 Americans saved by Richter's information. He read names, ranks, units. Combined, these 17 men had 34 children, 89 grandchildren. 3 became senators. 5 started major businesses. 1 invented a medical device that saved thousands of lives. Blood arithmetic, Eugene's son said. 17 lived because 23 died. Because 12 men were willing to become killers, Sarah added. The bunker felt smaller, the weight of decision heavier. I have something too, Bill Jr. said. He pulled out a letter. From my father to me, to be opened only if the bunker was found, he read. Son, if you're reading this, you know what I became. I killed children, I killed farmers, I killed wounded men. I did it to survive, but I still did it. Don't forgive me. Don't defend me. Just understand. We were 20 years old in hell, and we chose to live. Every terrible thing after was the price of that choice. I paid it for 50 years. Now it's paid. Let it end with us. But it doesn't end, Jimmy said. Every veteran with PTSD carries some version of this. Every survivor of torture, every refugee from war, they all carry the weight of what survival required. Clara Richter stood. May I tell you what I think? Nods around the room. Bury the torture films. No one needs to see boys being broken. But preserve the story. Not the details, but the truth. That 12 Americans survived by supporting each other, escaped by doing terrible things, and lived with the consequences by continuing to support each other. The Army won't allow, Mitchell started. The Army will classify everything for 75 years, Clara continued. But the families can tell their version. The survival, not the torture. The brotherhood, not the breaking. The lifetime of penance, not just the 19 days of killing. She looked at each family member. Your fathers were neither heroes nor monsters. They were men who faced an impossible situation and found a possible solution. It cost them everything, but they paid it. Honor that payment. How? Dorothy asked. Jimmy knew. He'd known since he'd found Frank's final entry. We create a memorial, not to what they suffered, but to what they chose. 12 names, 1 phrase. They held the line. No details, no explanation. Just acknowledgement that they existed, they survived, and they bore the cost. And the films? Sarah asked. We keep 3. The singing on day 8 to show their resistance. The confrontation on day 44 to show their humanity even toward their torturer. and the 1946 reunion to show they came home. The rest? Jimmy looked at the families. We burn them, tonight, together. Let the details die, but the truth survive. And the bunker? Dietrich asked. Seal it, but mark it. Here, 12 Americans discovered that brotherhood survives what breaks men alone. Dorothy called for the vote. One by one, families voted, some reluctantly, others with relief. Unanimous. Preserve the essential truth, bury the brutal details. They spent the next 4 hours sorting films, 3 to keep, 41 to burn. The documents went into a single file, to be sealed but not destroyed. As they worked, families shared stories, how their fathers woke screaming, how they couldn't sleep without checking on their children, how they flinched at German accents but sent money to German families. At midnight, they built a fire on the beach. One by one, they fed the films to the flames. Each canister represented days of torture, moments of breaking, decisions no one should have to make. Frank's 23 kills, Tommy's missing fingers, Eugene's burns, Billy's shattered bones, Bobby's psychological warfare, all of it turning to smoke and ash, but also Richter's documentation of their singing, evidence of their resistance, proof that 12 men had found something unbreakable in each other. As the last film burned, Jimmy read Frank's final journal entry aloud. We thought surviving meant staying alive. We were wrong. Surviving meant living with what staying alive required. We thought brotherhood meant supporting each other through torture. We were wrong. Brotherhood meant supporting each other through survival. For 50 years, we've carried this together. When I die, I'll die knowing we held the line, not in the bunker, after. We held the line against becoming what we'd been forced to become. That's our victory. Not that we survived, but that we survived the surviving. The fire died to embers. The cement truck moved in, began filling the bunker entrance. In hours, it would be sealed again, this time forever. But on the beach, 13 families stood together, carrying a truth they'd voted to preserve. 12 men entered hell. 12 men escaped. 23 died for their freedom. 17 lived because of their suffering. And for 50 years, 12 broken men held each other up, refusing to let survival destroy them. They were heroes. They were killers. They were victims. They were victimizers. They were human, and they held the line. As the families dispersed, Dorothy handed Jimmy a final envelope. From all of them, they each wrote one in case this day came. 12 letters, 12 perspectives on the same truth. But that would be for later, for processing, for understanding. Tonight, they'd made their choice. Honor the men, not the monsters they'd been forced to become. Remember the brotherhood, not the breaking. Preserve the truth that survival is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of learning to live with what survival cost. The bunker entrance disappeared under tons of concrete, sealed but not forgotten. Above it, they'd place a simple marker. EL62, November 1944, January 1945. 12 men discovered here that together they could endure anything, even survival. The last line was Jimmy's addition from Frank's journal. They held the line. The flight back to Washington felt like surfacing from deep water. Jimmy sat with the 3 preserved films in his carry-on, the 12 letters still unopened in his jacket pocket. Mitchell sat across the aisle, silent since they'd left France. What happens now? Jimmy asked. Paperwork, classification hearings. The Army needs to decide what to do with what we saved. We voted. The families agreed. The families don't have final say. The Army does. Mitchell's voice was flat. There are 17 other families, too, the ones who were saved. They might want to know whose blood bought their fathers' lives. Jimmy hadn't thought of that. They landed at Andrews just after dawn. Beth was waiting in the terminal, their 2 kids asleep in chairs beside her. She stood when she saw him, and he could see the questions in her eyes. "Later," he said, pulling her close. "At home." But home felt different now. Frank's house. Jimmy had inherited it along with the secrets. Every room held new weight, the kitchen where Frank had taught him to make pancakes, those same hands that had strangled a German farmer. The garage where Frank went every November 16th. The garage. While Beth put the kids to bed, Jimmy went to investigate. He'd been in here hundreds of times, but now he was looking differently. Behind Frank's workbench, barely visible, scratches in the concrete wall. Numbers, phone numbers, all with different area codes. 12 of them. Under the bench, a loose board. Behind it, a metal box. Inside, cassette tapes labeled by year, 1950 through 1993. Jimmy grabbed 1975, random choice, and played it on Frank's old tape deck. Static, then voices. Baker Company, roll call. Frank's voice, older but strong. Tommy here. Billy, present. Eugene, checking in. All 12, one by one. Then Frank. 31 years, gentlemen. Anyone breaking? Every damn day, someone said. Might have been Bobby, but not broken. Sarah had another nightmare, Tony's voice. Keeps asking about my hands. Why they shake. What do I tell her? Nothing, Frank replied immediately. She's 10. She doesn't need to carry our weight. It's getting harder. The kids know something's wrong. Then we be better fathers. We show them strength without explaining the weakness. Jimmy fast-forwarded. More of the same. 12 men checking on each other, sharing struggles, never mentioning specifics, but always understanding. The doorbell rang. This early, it couldn't be good. Dorothy Brennan stood on his porch with 6 other family members. Bill Jr., Sarah Novak Williams, Michael Palmer, and others. We need to talk, Dorothy said, about what we didn't burn. They gathered in Frank's living room. Dorothy pulled out a box of her own. After the vote, after the burning, I kept thinking, we destroyed evidence of their suffering but kept evidence of their crimes. That feels wrong. We agreed, Jimmy started. We agreed in emotion. Now we need to think. She pulled out more documents. These are from Tommy's things, records of the German families they sent money to, names, addresses, amounts, proof they killed civilians. Proof they tried to make amends, Michael countered, or proof that could destroy their legacies if it got out. Sarah held up a letter. From my father to yours, Frank. Listen to this. She read, Frank, the money isn't enough. It'll never be enough. That boy I killed, the Hitler Youth, I see him every night. 15 years old, same age as my son will be next year. How do I raise a son knowing I killed someone else's? The payments help me sleep, but they don't help me forget. Nothing helps me forget. That's exactly why we should preserve these, Bill Jr. argued. They show our fathers were human. They felt guilt. They tried to atone. Or they show our fathers were war criminals with guilty consciences, Sarah shot back. The argument escalated. Families who'd voted together 12 hours ago now divided. Jimmy noticed they sat in 2 groups, those who wanted full preservation and those who wanted complete burial. Then Michael Palmer said something that stopped everyone. There's someone else we need to consider, the 17 who were saved. He pulled out a list Mitchell had provided. 3 of these men are still alive, living in nursing homes. They have no idea who saved them. Good, Dorothy said. Let them die in peace. Or in ignorance, Michael countered. Don't they have a right to know? To know what? That their lives cost 23 German civilians? That they're alive because 12 men became killers? The front door opened. Jimmy hadn't locked it. An elderly man entered, moving slowly but deliberately. Behind him, 2 more old men, one in a wheelchair. We know, the first man said. Everyone froze. I'm Samuel Harris, Staff Sergeant, captured December 1944, held at Facility 7. He looked around the room. I was one of the 17. The man in the wheelchair spoke. Robert Walker, Private First Class, Facility 9. The third, William Brooks, Corporal, Facility 12. "How did you—" Dorothy started. "We've always known," Harris said. "Not the details, but enough. 17 Americans suddenly found by Allied forces in January 1945. All from different German facilities that mysteriously had documentation left behind? We knew someone paid for our freedom." He sat heavily in Frank's chair. "For 50 years, we've been looking for who saved us, hired investigators, searched archives. Nothing. Until last week when the French newspapers mentioned Bunker EL62. "That wasn't in the papers," Mitchell said, appearing in the doorway. He must have followed them. "Not in American papers," Walker said from his wheelchair. "But French local news covered the construction delay, mentioned 12 American dog tags found. We did the math. 12 Americans missing since November 1944. 17 Americans found January 1945. The timing fit." Brooks pulled out a worn notebook. "We've been keeping our own records, what we remembered from our rescue. The Allied soldiers who found us said they received anonymous intelligence, specific coordinates, guard schedules, like someone had inside information." "Richter's information," Jimmy said quietly. "Who?" Jimmy looked at the families. They nodded. "The man who tortured them, our fathers. Before he died, he gave them information about your locations. They used it to save you." Harris leaned forward. "How did he die?" Silence. "How did he die?" Harris repeated. "Our fathers killed him," Dorothy said flatly. "Cut his wrists and watched him bleed out." Harris nodded slowly. "Good. After what he did to them, good." "You don't understand," Sarah said. "They also killed civilians during their escape. Farmers, children. 23 Germans died so they could get that information to save you." The 3 old soldiers exchanged looks. Walker spoke. "We know about necessary killing. We were in war, too." "These weren't combat deaths. These were murders." "These were survival choices," Harris corrected. "You think we didn't make similar choices? You think any soldier who survived didn't?" He pulled out his own file. "After we were rescued, the 17 of us stayed in touch, like your fathers did. We call each other, check in, because we knew we carried something together, the weight of being saved when others died." "You formed your own network?" "Had to. No one else understood. Survivor's guilt is one thing. Knowing someone suffered to save you? That's something else." Brooks wheeled himself forward. "We've been supporting each other for 50 years, just like your fathers did. Different burden, same need, someone who understands." "There's more," Harris said. He pulled out a check. 17 families, 50 years of contributions. We created our own fund, over $300,000. We were going to donate it to veteran causes, but now—" He placed the check on the coffee table. "This belongs to your families. Payment for payment. Blood money for blood money." Dorothy stared at the check. "We can't take this." "You can't not take it," Walker said. "We've been carrying this debt for 50 years. Let us pay it." "You don't owe—" 17 lives, Harris interrupted. 17 men who came home, had families, built lives. My grandson just graduated medical school. Walker's daughter runs a tech company. Brooks's son is a teacher. None of them exist without your father's sacrifice." He stood, pulled out another list. 17 saved men, 42 children, 106 grandchildren, 14 great-grandchildren so far. That's what your fathers bought with those 23 German lives. The math of survival. Cold, brutal, undeniable. "There's something else," Walker said. "We found some of the German families, too, the ones your fathers sent money to." Everyone turned. 3 are still alive. They want to meet you. "Absolutely not," Sarah said immediately. "They're victims, too," Walker continued. "Their fathers, husbands, sons killed by desperate men. They've been receiving anonymous money for decades. They deserve to know why." "They deserve peace," Dorothy countered. "There is no peace in mystery," Brooks said. "Trust me. 50 years of wondering who saved us nearly drove us mad. These German families have 50 years of wondering who killed their loved ones and why money keeps coming. Mitchell cleared his throat. The Army's position— "Fuck the Army's position," Harris said bluntly. "This is between the families, the ones who paid and the ones who were paid for." He pulled out 3 letters. "From the German families. They're flying in tomorrow." "You contacted them without asking us?" Sarah's voice was rising. "We contacted them because we understand waiting for answers. 50 years is too long." Jimmy picked up one of the letters, German postmark but written in English. "My name is Greta Muller. My father was Hans Muller, a farmer killed in January 1945. Every year, money arrives. No note, no explanation. I need to know why. I need to know if my father died for something or nothing. Please." The second letter: "I am Erich Hoffman. My brother Karl was 15, Hitler Youth. Someone has been sending our family money since 1946. My mother died believing Karl was killed by monsters. I think he was killed by men trying to survive. Which is truth?" The third: "My husband Otto was taken from our farm January 1945. His body was found in our truck. Someone has been supporting me for 50 years. I am 93. Before I die, I need to thank them or curse them. I don't know which until I know why." "Jesus," Bill Jr. whispered. "Tomorrow," Harris said. 2 p.m., Arlington VFW Hall. We've arranged everything." "You had no right," Dorothy started. "We had every right," Walker interrupted. "We're part of this story, the 17 saved. We've been silent for 50 years, but if you're preserving truth, we deserve our chapter." He pulled out his own box of documents. Letters between the 17th, our own network, our own guilt, our own survival after survival. We've been carrying your father's secret without knowing it. Now we know, and we want to help carry it properly." "How?" Harris stood. "By telling the complete story. Not just 12 men who survived torture, not just 17 men who were saved, but all of it. The German families, the payments, the networks of support, the full cost, and the full redemption." "There is no redemption," Sarah said, "just survival and its price." "Then let's calculate the full price," Brooks said, "and decide if it was worth paying." He looked at each family member. "Your fathers paid with their souls. We paid with survivor's guilt. The German families paid with their loved ones. Everyone paid. The question is, what did we buy?" Jimmy thought about Frank's journal. That desperate line, "God forgive us for surviving." Maybe God's forgiveness wasn't the point. Maybe it was about the living, forgiving each other, or at least understanding each other. "We'll be there," he said. 2 p.m. Dorothy looked at him sharply. "You don't speak for all of us?" "No, but Frank was squad leader. Someone has to decide." "And you decide we meet with the families of people our fathers murdered?" Jimmy looked at the 17 soldiers' list. All those children and grandchildren who existed because 23 Germans didn't. "I decide we finish what they started. Full accountability, full truth. Let everyone touched by this meet share their weight and maybe find some kind of peace." "Or open wounds that should stay closed," Sarah warned. "They're not closed. They've been bleeding for 50 years. Maybe it's time to try healing." Harris nodded. "The boy understands. Your fathers didn't just survive that bunker. They survived what surviving cost. Now we all need to survive knowing about it." He moved toward the door, then turned back. "One more thing. We've been in touch with Clara Richter. She's flying in too. Says she has something that belongs to all of us." "What?" "The rest of her husband's research. Not the torture documentation, the aftermath studies. What happened to the other groups who broke? Why your fathers didn't. She thinks it might help other veterans understand survival." He left, Walker and Brooks following. The families sat in Frank's living room, surrounded by the weight of expanding truth. Tomorrow, they'd face the German families. Tomorrow, the full cost would be calculated. Tomorrow, 50 years of secret payments and silent guilt would finally have faces, names, Voices. Jimmy picked up Frank's final letter from the 12s. Maybe it was time to read what his grandfather really wanted him to know. The Arlington VFW Hall hadn't seen this many people since the Vietnam Memorial dedication. Jimmy arrived early, helped set up chairs in a large circle, Dorothy's idea. "No one sits higher than anyone else," she'd said. "We all carry equal weight." By 1:45 p.m., the American families had gathered. Nervous energy, hushed conversations. Sarah Novak Williams stood by the window, watching for the Germans. Michael Palmer sat reading his father's Bible, the one Eugene carried after becoming a priest. At 1:55, Samuel Harris entered with the other 16 survivors. Not just Walker and Brooks, but all who could travel. Men in their 70s and 80s, some with walkers, 2 in wheelchairs. They sat together, a unit still. At exactly 2 p.m., the door opened. 3 elderly Germans entered. 2 women, 1 man. Behind them, Clara Richter, 91, but walking steadily. The room went silent. Greta Muller spoke first, accented English but clear. "I am the daughter of Hans Muller, farmer, killed January 7th, 1945. She was 70-something, gray hair severe, eyes that had cried themselves dry decades ago. Erich Hoffman, mid-60s, stood rigid. Karl Hoffman was my brother, Hitler Youth, 15 years old, shot January 5th, 1945. The last, ancient and trembling, I am Ilse Becker. Otto was my husband. His body was found in our truck January 4th, 1945. They sat. The circle was complete. 12 American families, 17 saved Americans, 3 German families, and Clara Richter. Dorothy stood. "We need to establish truth first. Complete truth." She pulled out Frank's ledger. "Read the names, dates, locations. 23 Germans killed during the escape. The room heard each name, each death, each payment made after." When she finished, Greta Muller stood. "My father was taking eggs to market. 6 in the morning. He saw men in his truck. He ran toward them, probably to help. He was like that. One grabbed him, strangled him, left his body in a ditch." Her voice was steady, factual. "Every Christmas since 1946, money arrived. No note, just cash in an envelope. My mother thought it was guilt money from the man who killed him. She was right." "Your father would have reported them," Harris said quietly. 12 escaped Americans. He would have had no choice. "I know, he was a good German. He would have done his duty." Greta's voice cracked slightly. "That's why he had to die. I understand. I don't forgive, but I understand." Erich Hoffman stood next. "My brother Karl was indoctrinated since age 10, believed in the Reich completely. When he found the Americans, he tried to run, to report them. They caught him. He pulled out a photo, a boy in Hitler Youth uniform, smiling. He was shot twice. Quick, your letter?" He looked at Jimmy. "Said Frank Sullivan pulled the trigger himself. Said he assigned each killing to different men so they'd share the guilt equally. That's what the records show. Karl would have gotten them killed. I know this. But he was 15. 15. Erich set down the photo. "The money helped my mother survive, but it didn't help her understand. She died thinking Americans were monsters." "We were," Jimmy said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. In that moment, they were monsters. They chose to be, to survive. Ilse Becker, the elderly widow, spoke in German. Clara translated. "She says Otto was a good man. Never supported the Nazis. But he was German, so he was the enemy. She understands war. Her first husband died in the Great War. But she wants to know, did he suffer?" Jimmy looked at the records. January 4th, the truck. No, it was quick. Ilse nodded, said something else. Clara translated. "She says the money saved her life. After the war, no pension, no support. The anonymous money fed her, housed her. She says her husband's death gave her life. She doesn't know how to feel about that." Samuel Harris stood. "Ma'am, I was one of the 17 saved because of information bought with your husband's blood. I've lived with that debt for 50 years. My children, grandchildren exist because your husband died. I'm sorry, and I'm grateful. Both." Walker wheeled himself forward. "We've all lived with this paradox. Grateful to be alive, guilty for the cost. Your families paid in blood. Our families paid in ignorance. The 12 paid in nightmares." "The question," Dorothy said, "is, what do we do now? We know the full truth. How do we live with it?" Clara Richter stood. "May I show you something?" She pulled out a thick folder. "My husband's other research, the 6 other bunkers where this experiment was conducted. 63 Allied soldiers subjected to the same program. None survived intact. They all broke, turned on each other, died alone, or insane." She spread out the documents. "But your fathers discovered something by accident. Richter documented it without understanding it. Shared suffering creates bonds stronger than individual breaking points. The singing, the jokes, the constant connection, it literally rewired their brains. They became a single organism with 12 parts." "They survived as a unit," Michael Palmer said. "More than that, they created a new form of consciousness, collective resilience. It's been studied since, secretly. Every military now trains this. Never leave anyone alone with trauma. Always maintain connection." Brooks spoke up. "That's what we did too. The 17 of us. We couldn't share what we didn't understand, but we shared the weight of surviving. Monthly calls like your father's." "And we've been doing it," Sarah realized. "These meetings, these arguments, we're maintaining their network." Clara continued. "The 12 didn't just survive torture. They discovered that humans can endure anything if they're not alone in enduring it. That's why Richter broke. He was alone. That's why the other 63 broke. They were isolated." "So our fathers were heroes?" Bill Jr. asked. "Despite the killings?" "They were evolution," Clara said. "They evolved past individual survival to collective survival. The killing was primitive necessity. The network was advanced humanity." Greta Mueller stood. "I need to say something about the payments." Everyone turned to her. "My family has received approximately $50,000 over 50 years. We've kept records." She pulled out a ledger matching Frank's. "We've used it for education. My son is a doctor. My daughter teaches. They exist because of this blood money." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the 23 Germans who died. Their families have produced 47 children, 93 grandchildren, teachers, doctors, engineers, built from American guilt money." She looked at the 17 saved Americans. "You count your descendants. We count ours. All of them exist because 12 men chose survival over innocence." The math kept expanding. 12 men's decision rippling through generations. Eric Hoffman pulled out his own list. "I've found other German families, the ones who still receive payments. Most don't know why. Some suspect. None want to stop receiving it. It's become generational support." "What do you want from us?" Dorothy asked. "The same thing you want," Ilsa said through Clara's translation. "To understand, to calculate if the trade was worth it." Jimmy did rough math. 23 Germans killed, 17 Americans saved, hundreds of descendants on both sides, millions of dollars in guilt payments creating educated families from tragedy. "There's something else," Harris said. He'd been quiet, thinking. "The 12's method, collective survival. It's been taught to every American POW since Korea. Thousands of soldiers have survived capture because of what your fathers discovered." "You're saying their torture saved others?" "I'm saying their response to torture became doctrine. Every SEER school, every resistance training program, every POW who's come home intact since 1950. They all learned what the 12 discovered. Stay connected, sing together, share the pain, never let anyone break alone." Clara added, "My husband's research, evil as it was, proved something crucial. Humans are not meant to suffer alone. The 12 proved humans can endure anything together. That knowledge has saved countless lives. Sarah stood abruptly. So we're supposed to celebrate? Our fathers were tortured, became killers, and somehow that's positive? No, Greta said firmly. Not celebrate, acknowledge. Your fathers paid a terrible price. My father paid with his life. But something was purchased with all that pain. She pulled out a final document. I've researched every family that receives payments. We've started meeting. Like you. Like the 17th. Another network built on shared mystery. Now we know why we're connected. How many families? 43 direct descendants still receiving payments. We call ourselves Die Vergessenen, the Forgotten, because our dead were forgotten, erased, unnamed except in your father's guilty consciences. Dorothy laughed bitterly. So now we have 3 networks, the 12's families, the 17 saved, and the German families, all orbiting around 19 days in January 1945. 4 networks, Clara corrected. Don't forget the other 63 who broke in the other bunkers. Their families meet too, to understand why their fathers, husbands, brothers came home insane or didn't come home at all. The room felt smaller, the weight of connection heavier. There's one more thing, Jimmy said. He'd been reading Frank's final letter while they talked. My grandfather wrote this the day before he died. He knew this day would come, when all the networks would finally meet. He read, "If you're reading this, the secret's out." Good. Secrets rot men's souls. The 12 of us rotted for 50 years. But we also grew. Every monthly call, every check sent to Germany, every nightmare shared, we were composting our guilt into something else. Connection, understanding, proof that enemies are just humans on the other side of violence. We killed 23 Germans. We saved 17 Americans. We survived 58 days of hell. We lived 50 years of aftermath. The math will never balance. Stop trying. Instead, understand this. We discovered by accident that humans can survive anything together. That discovery has saved more lives than we took. Our torture became teaching. Our guilt became generosity. Our nightmares became networks of support. To the German families, your loved ones died because we chose to live. We've tried to pay for that choice. The debt is unpayable, but we tried. To the 17 saved, you owe us nothing. Live good lives. That's payment enough. To our own families, we're sorry for the distance, the nightmares, the secrets. We were protecting you from carrying our weight. Now you carry it anyway. Carry it together. The bunker broke 12 men and rebuilt them as one organism. That organism has been growing for 50 years. Networks spreading, connections forming, understanding that survival isn't individual. It's collective. We held the line in that bunker. We held it during escape. We held it for 50 years after. Now you hold it. Together. Frank Sullivan for all 12. The room was silent. Then Ilse, through tears, said something in German. Clara translated, "She says her husband would be proud that his death created so much life." Greta Mueller stood. We propose something. All 4 networks. We meet annually, share stories, calculate the ongoing cost and benefit, keep the connection alive. Why? Sarah asked. Because isolation is what breaks people. Your fathers proved that. We're all survivors of their survival. We should survive it together. Harris nodded. The 17 agree. Dorothy looked around the room. The 12's families? One by one, they voted. Even Sarah, reluctantly. Then we continue what they started, Jimmy said. Not the killing, not the guilt, the connection, the understanding that no one survives alone. Walker pulled out a check, the $300,000 from the 17 families. This goes to a fund for all networks, veterans support, focusing on collective survival techniques. Greta added another check. From the German families, everything we've saved from 50 years of payments, it goes back to helping others survive. The checks piled up. Blood money transformed into something else. As the meeting ended, groups that had entered separately began mixing. Eric Hoffman talking to Michael Palmer about faith and survival. Ilsa holding Dorothy's hands, two widows sharing silent understanding. The 17 comparing their monthly call schedules with the 12's families. Jimmy stood with Clara Richter, watching connections form. "Your grandfather would be pleased," she said. He turned 12 men's agony into a survival mechanism for thousands. Evil experiment. Good result. At what cost? "Everything costs," Clara said. "The question is whether we purchase something worth the price. Your grandfather purchased connection from isolation, understanding from ignorance, networks from loneliness. Expensive, but valuable." As people began leaving, they exchanged phone numbers. The networks were formalizing, expanding. Sarah approached Jimmy. "I still think we should have buried it all." "Maybe, but now 43 German families know why they received money. 17 Americans know who saved them, and we know what our fathers really were." Which was? Jimmy thought about Frank's journal, the films, the testimony. Human, completely, terribly, beautifully human. The last to leave were the 3 elderly German women and men. At the door, Greta turned back. "Same date next year?" "November 16th, Dorothy answered. "The day after they were captured. The day they started becoming whatever they became." "We'll be here." After everyone left, Jimmy sat alone in the empty hall. 4 networks now connected by shared trauma, shared guilt, shared survival. Frank's final words echoed, "Hold the line." They would. Together. All of them, American and German, saved and sacrificed, families of heroes and families of victims. Because the 12 had discovered something in that bunker that transcended nationality, morality, even humanity. No one survives alone. Everyone pays the price. And sometimes the price purchases something worth having. Connection, understanding, the knowledge that even in hell, humans can hold each other up. They held the line. The Pentagon conference room was smaller this time, more cramped. General Harrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 JAG lawyers, a State Department official, and someone from CIA that Mitchell didn't introduce. Jimmy sat with Dorothy Brennan and Samuel Harris. They'd been chosen to represent all 4 networks. "The Army has reviewed the materials," Harrison began. "The 3 films you preserved, the documentation of payments to German families, the testimonies. We need to make a classification decision." "We've already decided," Dorothy said. "The families voted." "The families don't have legal authority," one of the lawyers interrupted. "These are military records, evidence of war crimes, and potentially evidence of justified military action." The CIA representative spoke. "The 12's survival method has been incorporated into training since 1951. We've just never acknowledged the source. If this becomes public, it could compromise current resistance techniques." "Or it could help people understand them," Harris countered, "knowing the history, the cost, the human element." Harrison pulled out a thick folder. "There's something else. We've been investigating the payments to German families. Over 50 years, approximately $1.2 million was sent. That's significant money from 12 soldiers' families." "They saved their military pay," Dorothy explained. "Pooled it, invested it. Every penny went to those families." Which could be seen as admission of guilt, or as restitution, or as criminal conspiracy. The lawyer's voice was flat. 23 civilians killed. That's a war crime. 23 civilians killed to save 17 American POWs, Harris said firmly. That's survival. The law doesn't recognize that distinction. Jimmy had been quiet, but now he pulled out a document he'd found that morning, hidden in Frank's desk behind a false panel. "This is a presidential pardon, dated 1946, signed by Truman." Everyone leaned forward. "It pardons 12 unnamed soldiers for any actions taken between November 14, 1944, and January 10, 1945. Blanket immunity." Harrison grabbed it, studied it. "This is authentic?" Frank had connections. The 17 saved Americans. 3 became senators. They pushed for this, quietly. The 12 never knew it existed. They had immunity and never used it. They didn't want legal forgiveness. They wanted to earn actual forgiveness through the payments, the support networks, the monthly calls. The State Department official cleared his throat. There's international implications. The German government has inquired about the bunker discovery. They want to know if German civilians were killed by American soldiers. Tell them, Dorothy said simply. Tell them everything. The torture, the escape, the killings, the payments. Full truth. That could damage relations, or heal them, Jimmy interrupted. Greta Muller, Erich Hoffman, Ilse Becker, they're preparing a statement from the German families, supporting the 12's actions as wartime necessity, acknowledging the 50 years of restitution. He pulled out the draft statement, translated, "We, the families of German civilians killed during the Baker Company escape, acknowledge the complex moral reality of war. Our loved ones died because 12 tortured Americans chose to survive. Those Americans then spent 50 years trying to atone. We accept their payments not as blood money, but as recognition of shared humanity. In war, everyone is victim and perpetrator. We choose understanding over vengeance." "They're forgiving war crimes?" the lawyer asked, incredulous. "They're acknowledging war's complexity," Harris corrected. 23 died, 17 lived. Hundreds descended from both. The math is messy, but the humanity is clear. Harrison stood, walked to the window. Outside, Arlington Cemetery stretched white and precise. "General," Mitchell said, "there's precedent. The My Lai materials, classified but studied, used for training about moral injury, command failure, battlefield ethics. This is different. These men became what they fought against." "No," Dorothy said firmly. "They became what survival required. Then they spent 50 years becoming human again." The CIA representative pulled out another file. "The collective resistance technique has saved approximately 3,000 American POWs since Korea. If we acknowledge its source..." "We honor the 12 who discovered it through agony," Jimmy finished. Harrison turned back. "You're asking us to classify the torture documentation but acknowledge the resistance technique, hide the crime but honor the criminals." "We're asking you to recognize complexity," Harris said. "These men weren't heroes or villains. They were humans in inhuman circumstances who found a way to survive and then found a way to live with surviving." The lawyer spoke again. "There's legal precedent for sealing war crime evidence when disclosure would harm national security or international relations." "But not for honoring war criminals." "They're not war criminals," Dorothy's voice rose. "They're my husband, Jimmy's grandfather, fathers who came home broken but determined to build something from the breaking." She pulled out Tommy's journal, one they hadn't burned. "My husband wrote this after killing his first German, a boy, 15 years old. Listen," she read. "I am become death, not destroyer of worlds, just destroyer of one German child who would have destroyed 12 Americans. The math works, but the soul doesn't. How do I live with necessary evil? Frank says we live together, carry it together, diluted among 12 consciences instead of one. But math doesn't work on guilt. 12 times guilt is still guilt." "That's not a war criminal," she continued. "That's a human being wrestling with impossible choices." The room was quiet. Harrison sat back down. "The Army's position is complicated. These materials prove war crimes. They also prove revolutionary survival techniques. They show American soldiers at their worst and best simultaneously." "So classify them," Jimmy said. "But with conditions?" "What conditions?" "The families maintain copies, sealed but preserved. In 75 years, full declassification. The story gets told, just not yet." "And in the meantime?" "A memorial, not public, but official. Arlington, restricted section. 12 names, 17 saved, 23 casualties of war, all acknowledged equally." "You want us to memorialize enemy civilians?" I want you to memorialize the full cost of survival, all of it. Harrison looked at the others. Silent consultation. There's one more issue, the CIA representative said. Karl Dietrich, the German guard. He's been talking to researchers about the torture, the escape, his role. He needs to be silenced. He's 90 years old, Dorothy said. Let him talk. Who'll believe him? Other researchers, other militaries. He's evidence of the technique's origin. Jimmy stood. Dietrich saved 12 Americans. He's been carrying guilt for 50 years. He deserves to tell his story. Not if it compromises. It won't. Harris interrupted. We've talked to him. He'll limit his story to the survival elements, not the torture specifics. He wants to help people understand resistance, not enable torture. Mitchell had been silent but now spoke. I've been investigating something. The other bunkers Clara mentioned. The 63 who broke. Their families have been suffering for 50 years, not knowing why their loved ones came home insane. He pulled out a list. 41 are still alive. They deserve to know what happened. Not the torture details, but that their family members were subjected to experiments. That they broke because they were isolated, not because they were weak. That's 63 more security risks, the lawyer said. That's 63 more families who deserve truth, Dorothy countered. Harrison rubbed his face. You're asking us to expand disclosure while maintaining classification, to honor war crimes while condemning them, to reveal truth while hiding details. We're asking you to be human, Jimmy said, to recognize that some truths are too complex for simple categories like classified or public, hero or criminal, right or wrong. The State Department official spoke. The German government is willing to accept a negotiated truth, acknowledge civilians died, acknowledge payments were made, seal the specifics. They don't want details either. Too complicated for modern politics. So everyone agrees to partial truth? Everyone agrees to livable truth, Harris corrected. The 12 lived with full truth for 50 years. It nearly destroyed them. We can honor them without repeating their suffering. Harrison stood again. I need to make some calls. This goes above me, maybe above all of us. They took a break. In the hallway, Dorothy grabbed Jimmy's arm. Your grandfather would be proud. You're fighting for them without violence. I'm trying, but I keep thinking about those boys they killed, 15 years old, same age as my son will be in 3 years. And because they killed those boys, 17 Americans live to have sons. The math is horrible, but it's still math. Harris wheeled over in his chair. His legs were failing, 50 years of a back injury from his own capture. I've been thinking about something. The 12 discovered collective survival accidentally. What if we could teach it intentionally, not through torture, but through training? You mean simulation? I mean connection, teaching soldiers, veterans, trauma survivors that the key to survival is maintaining human connection. Not just buddy system, deeper, shared consciousness like the 12 developed. Jimmy thought about the monthly calls, the financial network, the 50 years of mutual support. They were ahead of their time. Or trauma forced them to evolve. Either way, their suffering created knowledge. We should use it. They were called back in. Harrison looked tired but resolved. The decision from above. Classification maintained on torture documentation for 75 years. The 3 preserved films can be used for military training, restricted access. The payment records are sealed but acknowledged. The families can maintain copies. And the memorial? Approved? Arlington, Section 60. A single stone with 12 names. That's all. The 17 saved? Can be added. Small marker. 17 Americans liberated through intelligence gained at great cost. The 23 Germans? Harrison hesitated. No official memorial, but the families can place a marker at the German cemetery in Alexandria. Privately. And the networks? Continue meeting, privately. No media, no public disclosure. The Army will provide a liaison, Mitchell, to ensure classification is maintained. It wasn't everything, but it was something. There's one more thing, Harrison said. The president wants to meet with representatives. Privately, off the record. He wants to understand what happened. His father was a POW in Korea, survived using techniques we now know came from the 12. Dorothy laughed, short and bitter. So the 12 saved the president's father, too. The ripples keep spreading. As they prepared to leave, the CIA representative pulled Jimmy aside. Your grandfather's journal, the full one, we need it. Why? Research, understanding. We're still learning from what they discovered. Jimmy thought about Frank's desperate pencil marks. We won't break. We won't break. You can have copies. The original stays with the family. The man started to argue, then stopped. Fair enough. They earned that much. Outside the Pentagon, Dorothy, Harris, and Jimmy stood in the parking lot. So we won? Dorothy asked. We negotiated, Harris said. Best anyone could hope for. The 12 would understand, Jimmy added. They were experts at impossible compromises. His phone rang. Beth, you need to come home. Now there's someone here. The drive was tense. Jimmy found a car in his driveway he didn't recognize. German plates from a rental company. Inside, an elderly woman sat with Beth and their children. She looked familiar, but Jimmy couldn't place her. Mr. Sullivan, she said in accented English. I am Anna Richter, Ernst and Clara's daughter. Jimmy froze, the child Clara was carrying during the torture. My mother is dying. She sent me with this. She handed him a thick envelope. She never read it, too afraid. It's from your grandfather, sent in 1946. Inside, a long letter in Frank's handwriting. Mrs. Richter, your husband is dead. We killed him, but you should know he died as human as he could manage. He gave us information that saved 17 men. He asked about you and your child. He died badly, but not evilly. I'm sending money. Not much, but what we can spare. Not for forgiveness. That's not ours to give or yours to grant. But because your child shouldn't suffer for their father's sins. We discovered something in your husband's bunker, that humans can endure anything if they endure it together. Your husband discovered it too, at the end. He was alone, and it broke him. We were together, and it saved us. Raise your child to never be alone with pain. Teach them that connection is survival, that isolation is death. That's what we learned from your husband, not how to break, but how not to break. I don't expect a response, but know that 12 Americans think of you and your child, not with hate, with understanding that war makes everyone victim and villain. Franklin Sullivan for all 12. Anna was crying. My mother never knew he thought of us. She thought we were forgotten. Nobody was forgotten, Jimmy said. They remembered everyone, the saved, the sacrificed, even the enemy. Anna stood. My mother has one request. When she dies, she wants to be buried in America, near the 12's memorial. She says her life was defined by what happened in that bunker. She wants her death to be near it, too. That can be arranged. As she left, she turned back. Your grandfather saved 17 Americans with my father's information, but he also saved my mother and me with his letter, his money, his acknowledgement that we existed. That's 18 and 19 if you're counting. He was always counting, Jimmy said. Lives saved, lives taken. The math never balanced. Maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe it's just supposed to be remembered. All of it. That night, Jimmy sat in Frank's garage playing the 1993 tape, Frank's last recording, alone after Bobby died. Last report, Baker Company, 2nd Squad, all present and accounted for, just in different places. Some here, some gone ahead, but still connected, still checking in, still holding the line. 50 years since that bunker, 50 years of carrying what we did to survive. The torture was 58 days. The escape was 19 days. But the survival, that's been 50 years and counting. To whoever finds these tapes, we weren't heroes. We weren't villains. We were 12 men who discovered that together humans can survive anything, even surviving. Tell our story if you must, but tell all of it. The torture, the resistance, the killing, the saving, the 50 years of aftermath. All of it or none of it. We held the line in that bunker. We held it during escape. We held it for 50 years after. Now it's held in memory, in networks, in the knowledge that isolation breaks people, but connection saves them. 12 men entered hell. 12 men escaped. But really, one organism with 12 parts survived and spent 50 years teaching others how to survive too. That's our legacy, not the killing, not the torture, the connection. Franklin James Sullivan, Sergeant, United States Army, signing off. Still here, still American, still together. The tape ended. Jimmy sat in the dark garage, surrounded by 50 years of recorded connection. Tomorrow, he'd start transcribing them, all of them, the full story of 12 men holding each other up for 5 decades. Because Frank was right, all of it or none of it. And the all of it was the important part. November 16th, 1995. 1 year since the bunker's discovery. Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60. A small crowd gathered around a simple black granite stone, no different from thousands of others except for what it represented. The inscription was minimal. Baker Company, 2nd Squad, November 14th, 1944. January 10th, 1945. They held the line. 12 names below. Nothing more. Jimmy stood with Beth and their children. Around them, the 4 networks had assembled, 43 people in total. The American families, the 17 saved, 3 elderly Germans who'd flown in, and Clara Richter, 92 now, in a wheelchair pushed by her daughter Anna. Dorothy Brennan stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. "Tommy saved one thing from the bunker," she said. "A stone, just a piece of concrete. He carried it home in his pocket, said it was proof that walls could be broken. She placed it at the base of the memorial. One by one, others came forward. Billy Jr. left his father's dog tags, the ones Billy had hidden for 50 years, too painful to wear, too important to discard. Michael Palmer placed Eugene's priest collar. He wore this every day for 40 years, said it reminded him that even monsters could seek redemption. Sarah Novak Williams, who'd fought this memorial, left her father's wallet. Inside, visible through cracked leather, photos of all 11 squad members. Bobby had carried their faces until he died. The 17 saved had brought a plaque, privately made. To 12 who became 1, to 23 who paid the price. To 17 who lived because of both, we remember. Samuel Harris, leaning heavily on a cane, placed it beside the memorial. "The President sends his regards, privately. His father's survival technique came from what your father's discovered. He wanted to be here, but—" He shrugged. "Politics?" Greta Mueller came forward with Eric Hoffman and Ilse Becker. They carried a wreath, not flowers, but made of barbed wire twisted into a circle with white silk ribbons woven through. "From the German families," Greta said. "The wire represents the pain. The silk represents the 50 years of payments that helped us survive. Pain and grace, twisted together." Clara Richter wheeled herself forward. In her lap, a thick folder. "My husband's complete research, not the torture methods. Those died with him, but his observations about human connection under extreme stress. Every university wants it. Every military. I'm giving it to you," she looked at Jimmy, "to decide its fate." Jimmy took the folder. Inside, hundreds of pages of German text, charts, diagrams. At the bottom, a note in Frank's handwriting from 1946. Richter was evil but not wrong. Humans survive together or break alone. Use this knowledge for healing, not hurting. "We'll create a foundation," Jimmy announced. He'd been planning this with the networks. "For veterans with PTSD, teaching connection as survival. The 12's method, available to anyone who needs it." Funded how? Someone asked. Dorothy pulled out a check. The 12's Fund, what's left after 50 years of payments to Germany, $200,000. Harris added another. The 17's Gratitude Fund, $300,000. Greta stepped forward. The German family's collection, everything saved from 50 years of payments, $400,000. $900,000. Blood money transformed into healing money. We'll call it the Baker Company Foundation, Jimmy said. Anonymous support for veterans learning to survive survival. Mitchell, standing at the edge in dress uniform, nodded. The Army will contribute, quietly, training materials based on the 12's discovery. Carl Dietrich stepped forward. 91 now, he'd flown from Germany for this. I was the enemy, the guard, the witness. For 50 years, I've carried what I saw, what I didn't stop, what I finally, too late, helped end. He pulled out a small stone from his pocket. From the bunker, before it was sealed. Your fathers gave me something, the chance to choose differently, to be better than my orders. That choice saved my soul. He placed the stone beside Tommy's. I'm donating my family's wealth to the foundation, everything. Let it help others choose connection over isolation. The crowd stood silent. Enemy money joining blood money, joining gratitude money, all flowing toward healing. A car pulled up, an official government vehicle. The door opened, and the president stepped out. No media, no security visible, though Jimmy was sure they were there. He walked directly to Dorothy, took her hands. My father never knew who saved him, died wondering. Now I know. 12 men who discovered hell could be survived together. Thank you. He turned to the memorial, saluted. Not the presidential salute, but a soldier's salute. Long, precise, personal. Then he spoke, quietly, not for cameras, but for the gathering. The official record will never tell this story. Too complicated, too morally complex. But I want you to know, the 12's discovery has saved thousands. Every POW who came home from Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, using collective resistance techniques. Every veteran who learned to share trauma instead of carrying it alone. Your father's agony became doctrine that brought others home. He looked at the German families. And your losses made those saves possible. Everyone here is part of the same story. Victim and beneficiary, saved and sacrificed. He left as quietly as he'd come. As the sun set, the families shared stories, not of the bunker, those were sealed, classified, buried, but of after. How Tommy taught disabled kids to play baseball, never explaining why he was so patient with suffering. How Billy started a support group in 1950, decades before PTSD had a name. How Eugene heard 5,000 confessions and never judged, having done worse than anything he heard. How Bobby funded other veterans' businesses anonymously, paying forward what couldn't be paid back. How Frank called each man every month for 50 years, checking in, holding the line against isolation. Clara Richter spoke last, her voice barely a whisper. My husband broke those 12 men. They rebuilt themselves into something stronger. Then they spent 50 years rebuilding others. Evil experiment, good result. That's the only redemption possible. Using pain to prevent pain. As darkness fell, Jimmy read Frank's final letter, the one in the 12 letters he'd saved from the bunker. Jimmy, if you're reading this, you know everything. The torture, the escape, the killing, the saving, the 50 years of carrying it all. I'm sorry you have to know. But someone needs to remember the full truth. We weren't heroes in that bunker. We were scared boys who found strength in each other's fear. We weren't heroes during escape. We were killers who chose survival over innocence. We weren't heroes after. We were guilty men trying to balance an equation that never balanced. But maybe heroism isn't about being good. Maybe it's about choosing to be better than your worst moment. We were tortured, so we chose to heal. We killed, so we chose to save. We were broken, so we chose to help others hold together. For 50 years, we held each other up. Monthly calls, shared nightmares, divided guilt. We discovered in that bunker that humans can survive anything together. We proved it for 50 years after. Now you hold our story. Share it or bury it, but remember this. We were 12 men who became one. That one survived hell, escaped through blood, and lived with the weight by sharing it. That's our legacy. Not the torture we endured or the men we killed, but the connection we maintained. 50 years of refusing to let each other fall alone. You're part of that network now. You and all the families, all the saved, all the sacrificed. Connected by trauma but held together by choice. Choose connection. Always choose connection. Isolation is what breaks people. Connection is what saves them. We proved that with our pain. Now prove it with our story. Hold the line, grandson, not against enemies, but against isolation, against the lie that anyone survives alone. We didn't, we couldn't, no one can. Together we held. Together you'll hold. Together is the only way anyone holds anything. Frank, the gathering broke up slowly. Families exchanged numbers, made plans to meet, to maintain the connection. The foundation papers were signed there beside the memorial. $900,000 to teach veterans what 12 men learned through agony, that survival is collective, not individual. As Jimmy walked to his car, Clara Richter called him over. "Your grandfather visited me in 1973, said something I never understood until now." "What?" "He said, your husband's bunker was supposed to break us separately. Instead, it forged us together. We became metal in his furnace, but we chose our own shape. Then he said, that's the only revenge worth taking, becoming better than what tried to break you." She handed him a final envelope. "From my husband to yours, found it in his papers, never sent." The letter in German translated simply, "Sergeant Sullivan, you've won. Not the war, but the experiment. I tried to prove Americans break easily. You proved humans bond unbreakably. I am alone with this knowledge. You are together despite it. That's why you'll survive. And I won't." E. Richter. Even he understood at the end, Clara said. Connection is survival. A year later, the Baker Company Foundation had helped 300 veterans, teaching the 12's method: maintain contact, share weight, never let anyone break alone. The monthly calls between veterans, the shared accountability, the refusal to let isolation win. No one knew the source. The 12's names weren't on anything public, but their discovery spread, evolved, helped. Jimmy stood in Frank's garage, now Foundation headquarters. The wall covered with photos, not from the bunker, but after. 12 men at reunions, weddings, grandchildren's birthdays, living full lives despite carrying hell. The phone rang. Dorothy Brennan. "Jimmy?" "It's time." Clara Richter had died, 93 years old. Her last words, "Tell them I understand now. Pain shared is pain survived." They buried her in Alexandria, in the German cemetery, with a simple stone. Clara Richter. 1921 to 1996. Wife of Ernst, mother of Anna, connected to all. At her funeral, the 4 networks gathered again. Larger now, word had spread quietly among veterans, among families of the missing, among those carrying inexplicable weight. Anna Richter spoke at her mother's grave. "My parents were both casualties of that bunker. My father died in it. My mother lived 62 years after, but part of her died there too. But from that death came unexpected life, connection she never imagined, understanding she never expected, a place in a story larger than victim or villain." As they lowered Clara's casket, 12 bells rang. Not officially. Dorothy had arranged it. 1 bell for each member of Baker Company, then 17 more for the saved, then 23 for the German dead, and finally 1 long, sustained note for Clara, for Dietrich, for all the witnesses who carried what they saw. The bells stopped, Silence settled. Then, from the back, an old voice started singing, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." It was Harris. Then Walker joined. Then Brooks. One by one, everyone joined in. Americans, Germans, families of heroes and victims alike, singing the song 12 tortured boys had used to survive, now used to remember, to connect, to hold the line against forgetting. Together, always together. That was the only way to hold anything. The 12 had proved it in agony. The networks were proving it in memory. And somewhere, Jimmy was certain, Frank and his 11 brothers were still holding formation, still checking in, still refusing to let each other fall alone. Even death couldn't break that connection. They held the line forever.